Hello everybody and welcome back. Today we'll continue with our third section, which is about teaching approaches. And today our approaches were going to be total physical response and communicative language teaching. But before we start, as always, we have our quiz on the audiolingual method and Suggestopedia. So the audiolingual method was strongly influenced by which framework? We said that it was influenced by a particular framework that was predominant at that time. Then more attention was given to vocabulary or to repetition of grammatical patterns. So in audiolingual method, which aspect was given more attention, vocabulary or repetition of grammatical patterns? In Suggestopedia, the language learning should be conducted in a small or large groups. So small or large. And finally, what do we mean by effective? I talked about the difference between effective and effective with an A and with an E. So what do we mean by effective? So let's start with our video for today, which is a total physical response. So it's an approach developed by Asher that allows learners to wait until they are ready to speak but asks them to carry out actions. So Asher says that we don't have to rush learners and expect a lot from them. So it's okay for them to wait until they're ready to speak in the target language, but they are asked to carry out actions in the target language. So they give them instructions, and they have to follow them in the target language. So Asher developed this method to apply to L2 teaching, what he signaled as important sequences in L1 acquisition. So because young children begin by listening to the language in their surroundings, and only later on do they begin to speak. So in young children cases, we said that they start by comprehending or listening, and later on they start to speak. So Asher said that he will apply the same sequence in L2 teaching. Students or learners need to start by listening and carrying out actions. After that, when they are ready, they will start to speak. The characteristics of this method is it puts no pressure on learners to orally produce the target language, but asks them to carry out actions in response to the instructor's comments, like we said earlier. And learners are encouraged to speak only when they feel ready to do so, and this is thought to help relieve stress associated with language learning. So when the learner knows that even when he goes to do the language classroom, when he knows that he is not forced to produce the language or speak in the language, it will be less stressful when he will have to speak in the target language. So it's believed that it relieves stress associated with language learning. And the method is generally targeted toward beginning learners who need to acquire elementary speaking skills. So it's usually applied for learners who are beginners or still beginners in their beginning stages. So not in advanced cases. So advanced learner needs to produce the language, but in terms of beginners, this method is effective. But it has weaknesses, so it was pointed out that there is little experimental support for this approach. Again, it wasn't carried a lot in classrooms, so it doesn't have enough evidence or support. And total physical response is most often used as a supplement to other approaches. So even if this approach, even if it's effective, they say it's more often used as a supplement to other approaches. Enough, it's not alone. It's not enough to teach the language. Then we have communicative language teaching, or CLT. So this approach emphasizes using techniques that engage learners in the pragmatic, authentic, functional use of language for meaningful purposes. So in that approach, they focus on teaching the language in authentic or real situations. So that the learners can use the language to communicate, to converse, to use the language in authentic or real contexts. The characteristics, classroom goals, are focused on the components of communicative competence and not restricted to grammatical or linguistic competence. So the focus is on communicative competence, how to communicate, not on grammatical or linguistic competence. Also, organizational language forms are not the central focus, but rather aspects of language that enable the learner to accomplish communicative competence. So it's not important to acquire to focus on the forms of the sentence or the language. What's important is to be to communicate in the language. Fluency may have to take on more importance than accuracy to keep learners meaningfully engaged in language use. So fluency means to keep the conversation going, and accuracy to use the language correctly. So this approach says that fluency is more important than accuracy, to keep the conversation going and to being engaged in the conversation is more important than using the language accurately. Also, students ultimately have to use the language predictively and receptively in unrehearsed contexts, memorizing sentences and language to use is not important. What's important is to use language in unrehearsed contexts, it comes out naturally. Communicative classrooms recognize the importance of using authentic materials, that is, material that is not designed specifically for the classroom. For example, using newspapers, magazines, articles, and book reviews. So they used authentic materials such as newspapers, magazine articles, and book reviews. So that's all for this video. Thanks for watching and see you again inshallah in our next video.